Ready.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Licensing Act 2003 Subcommittee, Tuesday the 9th of June. Welcome all members to the meeting. We've got Councillor Ivor Emo, Councillor Frank Camp and Councillor Howard Baker. And we have officers, Imelda Grady, Democracy, John Clucas, the Licensing Officer, and Emma Barker from Legal. We also have the applicant in attendance along with his representative, and we also have Mr. Smiley joining us for the meeting. First item on the agenda is appointment of chair. Could we appoint a chair, please? Members.
Can I nominate Frank Camp?
Councillor Cant, are you happy with? Councillor Cant, have you got your microphone on?
I've got my microphone on now. Yes, I'll accept.
Okay. You accept the chair. Thank you very much. Okay, so it's over to chair. This is apologies, and we've had apologies from Councillor Paul Campbell. The next item is this meeting of the 21st of June. Are members happy with those minutes?
I move those minutes, Chair.
Thank you.
I presume they're okay, although I wasn't at the meeting. But,
Councillor Baker was, I think. There is no any additional item of business. And are there any declarations of interest? None. No. Exclusion of the public as per agenda. So over to you, Chair, for the report.
Yeah, thank you. Did Emma say that she would run through the procedure for the benefit of everyone?
I will,
yes.
Councillor Canton. I'll just do that now, and then everybody knows what we're doing.
Okay, thanks.
Before we start, can I just check with Mr. Clucas that all interested parties have been notified of the hearing?
Yes, that's correct.
And if there are any interested parties that aren't present, have they given notice that they intended to attend the hearing or not?
The four have all been written to, and there's only one accepted the invitation to be involved today. The other three have declined.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. So the procedure this morning will be that Mr. Clucas will first of all present the report. Then each party present in turn will make their representations. We'll start that with Mr. Smiley, who will make his representations. And then if the applicants or the applicants' representatives have any questions, they may ask a question. And then if members have any questions, they may ask Mr. Smiley any questions. Then it goes over to the applicant's representative, Mr. Henderson. He'll make his representations. And again, questions either from Mr. Smiley or then members. Each party will then have the chance to summarise, and at that point you can't introduce, it's just a summary of what you've already said. And then the members and myself and the Democracy Officer will retire into a private session then to consider the decision. So it's over to Mr. Clucas now just to present the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, please.
It's Mr. Clucas first.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Clucas. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I've previously circulated to all parties my licensing subcommittee reports. I'm not going to go into every single word of that, but I will pick out the highlights, and then at the queries, obviously, I'll try and clarify those for you. The purpose of this morning's hearing is to consider an application received by Christopher Anthony Gorton and Kirk Lee Gorton for a new premises licence for Laura House Pub Canteen, and that's under the Licensing Act 2003. The premise is a new application for a premises licence for Laura House Pub Canteen. Now, I have to say there's already a premises licence for Laura House Function Room in the name of the applicants, and there's also a club premises certificate for Laura House Working Men's Club at the same address. There was a hearing held at Burnley Town Hall on Friday, the 21st of February 2020 in respect to an application to vary the existence for the function room. On this date, a decision was made. The requested change was a substantial change, so that application. This hearing is in relation to a new application for a premises licence, and a copy of the application is attached in the papers today. Members are recommended to make a determination with a view to promoting the 4 licensing objectives. That's the prevention of public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm.
Sorry, Mr. Clucas, can I just stop you for a minute? One of the participants has got some audio issues, so can we just hold there for 1 minute while we resolve?
Hiya. Hello. Hello.
Hi, Peter.
Hiya.
Can you confirm? Well, obviously you can hear and speak to the meeting now. If you press *6 on your phone, that should mute your phone while you're not participating in the meeting. And then when you need to speak, it will be *6 again. All right.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Clucas. If you'd like to continue.
Listen, I just wanted to make sure that you're okay where I'm up to so far. I've just outlined the application and I've gone through the licensing objectives. Okay, I'll carry on until told otherwise. The committee has got the following options. They can subject to mandatory conditions and conditions consistent with the operating schedule. You can impose relevant conditions to such an extent as considered appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. You can exclude any of the licenses to which the application relates. You can amend the times for all or some of the licensable activities, or indeed you can refuse the application. You're responsible for determining such applications. In terms of key points, the application is for a new premises licence under the Licensing Act 2003. To give some background, there's currently a club premises certificate in place for the whole of the footprint of Lower House Mills Club, and that's for the whole of the building. And I've attached the copy of that at Appendix B. There's also a premises licence for part of that building. That's the function room, and that's attached at Appendix C. Basically, the applicants want to change the whole of the premises to a pub. To do this, they've now been directed to make a new application for a premises licence, and if this is successful, they have the option to surrender the club premises certificate and also surrender the existing premises licence just for the function room. Copies of the application were sent to all responsible authorities. No objections from any of the responsible authorities. I do have to mention, though, the Environmental Health Department of Burnley Council did engage in early discussions with the applicants, and this resulted in some changes to the application and some Remedial soundproofing work has already been done to the building. Furthermore, the applicant has agreed to one more condition that was not originally in the schedule of the application, and that was the whole wall between the premises and the adjoining premises, known as the lodge, shall be suitably soundproofed, such that live and recorded music cannot be heard inside these premises. As a result, there's now no representation from that agency or any other responsible authority. To say the applicants and their agent have cooperated with Burnley Council licensing officer, and they've also had to pay for 2 press advertisements for this application, which was, and the previous one being the subject of the hearing on the 21st of February 2020. In terms of written representations that are accepted by our authority, there were 4. The first one came from Mr. John Fitzpatrick of number 3 Lawfields, and that's attached at appendix E. Raymond Currid from number 4 Lawfields, Burnley, that's attached at appendix E.
Chair, can I
Yes.
just interject and ask, these are all redacted on the public papers, as this is a public broadcast, are they normally detailed?
I don't think it's necessary to possibly to give the names and addresses of the individual representatives, other than Mr. Smiley, who's obviously in attendance today.
I understand. Sorry, I'll say it. So Mr. Smiley's in attendance today, and then there's a 4th resident whose personal details are withheld in the reports, and they're attached to Appendix G. So there were 4 written pieces of representation, and Mr. Smiley is here at the hearing today to make his representations in person. I've talked about the license, and the applicants have in their operating schedule detailed what steps they intend to take to promote the licensing objectives, and compliance with this schedule does become a condition of any licence granted. Notices of hearing have been sent to the applicant and to each of the persons from whom the licensing authority has accepted a representation. There are now extracts in my report from the Burnley Council's statement of licensing policy, and these are relevant to the application. I'm not going to go through each of those, but I will refer to the relevant paragraphs in the statement of licensing policy. So I have referred in my report to paragraphs 1.14, 1.15, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3,
Chair,
3.4.
Sorry to interrupt, John, but
Yeah,
I haven't got any of those, neither have I got...
Councillor, you will have a chance to ask,
No, he's referring to stuff that's not in the papers, Chair. If you can find 3.2, then I don't think we have all this information before us.
Are you okay?
When you find 3.2 and you're in policy implications, item 7, it stops at 3.1, then jumps to 7.4 in my copy.
Okay. I think while we were scanning the documentation, Councillor, there was one page we tried to resend a copy of my application. If you want me to go through verbally the whole of the missing page, I can do that.
No, I am aware of them from previous things, but it just seems strange in a public document it's missing. Yeah. And B, I haven't got appendices A, B or C. Anyway, where can I find those? What page are they on, John?
They're not in my report. They were sent out as separate documents pack. They should be along with the application.
My pack ends at page 74. Is there anything after that I'm missing?
Councillor Baker, I think they are in there. I just don't think they're itemised as appendices. I just think they're just on page numbers, so it might be helpful if the page numbers could be referred to, because I don't think they're headed as appendices.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I haven't got the relevant page numbers in the one composite document that you've got, so I can't tell you what page number of your individual pack, but I am reassured that they are within the pack. And so when you're making your deliberations, obviously you will have access to all of that information. Okay. Please tell me if you haven't got any of that information. I want to make sure everybody's got that, because I sent out all of the information, my report and the appendices, and also via post to all of the participants, and I apologise if you've not got those to hand.
Mr.
Well, while I finish, my recommendation, item 3, then jumps to item 6. I haven't got sections 4 and 5 in your report that you referred to either.
Councillor Baker, have you had the electronic pack?
As well.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just looking
Possibly,
at
I
what's
don't
been
know.
sent out.
I can have a look online for it if you
The
like.
electronic pack, yeah, was up to page, I'm just checking there.
Page 24 I'm relating to, because everything seems to have gone funny on page 24.
Just scanning the document.
Baker, from what I can see, I think it's just a numbering issue. I think it's just, it should say 3, and then financial implications should be 4, and policy implications should be 5. I think that's gone a bit funny.
Well, to be honest, when I look back at the previous application in February when this went on, and they were there in that.
All right,
4 and
okay.
5, and you know, I'm not so about the missing 3.1 to 7.4. They're standards anyway, but it looks a bit strange to the public. I would suggest that we're talking about things that don't appear. But let me have a look at page 24.
I think they are on the website. They do appear. I'm looking at those now.
No, they're not. They're not on the website. Page 24 to 74 again jumps from 3 to 6.
Can we just determine what is actually missing?
Well,
I've got conduct of hearings is page 13 to 21, and the determination of the premises licences are pages 22 to 74.
yeah, page 24 is the one I'm referring to, Imelda.
At the bottom of page 23, it's number 3 recommendation, and then it moves straight to number 6 applications, and we just want to miss.
To be honest, it misses out a major part that John was referring to in the previous one about the change of use from a club to a pub, which has a major impact on the area from being a members-only club to a public house.
Can I just suggest that we adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes to resolve this issue?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yes.
2, 1, go.
Right.
Chair, do you want me to
So,
Over
continue
to
in my
you, Chair.
report?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good start.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
you carry on with your report, John.
thank you very much, Chair. Just for clarity, I'll go through each of the points, and then in a public forum, everybody's heard what my report says, and then there's no need to necessarily refer to little bits and pieces of. In the Council's licensing policy under section 3.2, it says we shall consider each licence and objective to be of equal importance. They will be considered in relation to matters centred on the premises or within the control of the licensee. We will objectively consider the direct effect of the carrying of licensable activities has in the vicinity of the premises. 3.3 says licensing mechanism for the general control of antisocial behaviour by individuals once they're beyond the direct control of the licensee or vicinity of licensed premises. 3.4 says we will not deter individual making an application and having that application judged on its individual merits. 3.5 says we will not deter any person from making any representations in respect of any application or seeking a review of the licence. 3 says if relevant representations are made in relation to a premises licence or a club premises certificate, the council will consider whether it's necessary to impose conditions to regulate behaviour on the premises and access to them where this relates to licensable activities and the licensing objectives. Any conditions attached will not seek to manage the behaviour of customers once they're beyond the direct management of the licensed holder, staff or agents, but may seek to impact upon the behaviour of customers on or in the immediate vicinities of the premises as they seek to enter or leave. 3.6 says the authority will consider whether issues relating to public nuisance can be effectively dealt with by necessary and appropriate conditions. These conditions will normally focus on the more sensitive periods, for example, noise from premises in the late evening or early morning when residents into sleep. Paragraph 7.1 says we will consider each application upon its individual merits, and the basis of any application will be the draft operating schedule. We welcome risk assessment documents to be submitted in which the licence applicant will specify how they will support the 4 licensing objectives. Paragraph 7.2 says flexible licensing hours will be important to ensure the area of concentration of customers leaving premises simultaneously, minimising the possible sources of friction at fast food outlets and taxi ranks, thereby reducing the potential for violence and disorder and fear of such. Paragraph 7.3 says we will avoid fixed or artificially early closing times which produce peaks of disorder and disturbance by customers merging into the streets simultaneously. We will balance this with stricter conditions being expected in relation to noise control in dense residential accommodation. Paragraph 7.4, however, there is no general presumption in the favour of lengthening licensing hours, and the 4 licensing objectives will be of paramount consideration at all times. When there are objections to an application and the committee believes that changing the licensing hours would undermine the licensing objectives, they may reject the application or grant it with conditions and or different hours from those requested. The hours requested by the applicant will normally be approved where the applicant can show in their risk assessment and operating schedule that the proposal would not adversely affect the environmental quality, residential amenity and character of any particular area or undermine one or more of the licensing objectives. 7.7 says evidence that one or more of the licensing objectives would be undermined, a responsible authority, authorised person or interested party has the ability to object to the issue or variation of the licence or request a review of the existing licence. 7.8 says the onus to provide the evidence will always be on the person or organisation making the objection or the review application. Paragraph 9.1 says the authority may only impose conditions where relevant representations are made following applicant or area licence or request a review when that's being considered. Paragraph 9.2 says the council recognises that the only conditions that should be imposed on a licence are those which are appropriate and proportionate to the promotion of the licensing objectives. There may be circumstances where existing legislation and regulations already effectively promote the licensing objectives and no additional conditions are required. Where conditions are imposed, they will be tailored to the individual style and characteristics of the premises and the events concerned. Members are also reminded that consideration should be given to the Human Rights Act 1998, in particular those are rights afforded by Article 6, right to a fair hearing, Article 1 of the First Protocol, protection of property, and Article 8, respect to private and family life. I'll also refer to an extract from Home Office revised guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. Paragraph 9 says licensing authorities are best placed to determine what actions are appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives in their area. All licensing determinations should be considered on a case-by-case basis. They should take into account any representations or objections that have been received from responsible authorities or other persons and representations made by the applicant or premise user as the case may be. And at paragraph 9.43, the authority's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being what's appropriate for the promotion of the licence and proportionate to what it's intended to achieve. In relation to background papers, I've referred to the Burnley Council Statement of Licensing Policy and the Home Office guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act. The final comment I will say is the hearing in February related to a variation. Following that, consultation took place between residents and the applicants. And as a direct result of that, the applicants reduced the hours that they requested in the new application. So in the original February, they were after later hours, and in the new application that we are considering today, they have brought their closing time earlier, so it doesn't open as late as it did for the previous. I just need councillors to be made aware of that. And obviously, I would ask that you take into consideration all of the representations that have been received by the authority.
All right, thank you very much, John. I think the next, if anyone has any questions for Mr. Clucas, anyone, any questions? Councillors, any questions?
Sorry, Frank, I'm muted. It takes me a while to unmute.
Right.
Just regarding, I'm just looking for it now. It's one of those that just run out then. Oh, 7.6, John. What was their? I haven't got a copy of their the risk assessment that they submitted. Have you got a copy of that you can show us or discuss?
The application that was received by the licensing authority is what you have there. That contains everything.
So there's no risk assessment done?
You have the application, and that is it's upon that basis of that application and information that you derive from this hearing that you make your decision upon.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else, Chair.
Any further questions? Right, we'll move on to Mr. Gorton, Kirk Gorton.
Councillor Cant, it's for Mr. Smiley to make his representations first.
Ah, right, yes, my apologies. So yeah, Mr. Smiley, if you'd like to give your representations.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Just to apologise if you hear any background music. The workmen next door have got some music playing. Firstly, I'd like to make 3 points for my objection. Firstly, the main reason is the noise nuisance that I'm suffering from the club premises on my side of our party wall. I live next door. On my side, I've got an open plan living dining room. I've got my bathroom, and then I've got a bedroom which share the party wall. Now, I must say, I only have a problem when there's amplified music played in the old club area. The function room doesn't affect me. It's just our music in the bar area of what was a club. When they're watching music, when they're watching football on the TVs, or there's background music playing, again, there's not an issue. I can't hear anything. However, when they put discos and karaoke on in that room, it's like being in the same room. The noise is very loud. I can hear everything that's going on. My wife's profoundly deaf, but she can feel the vibrations even when she's in bed. Despite on the current premises certificate, which should limit disturbance up to 2300 hours, this has gone on till midnight, till 1 o'clock and to 2 o'clock on occasions. I normally go to bed about 10:30, especially on a work night, and sometimes the noises stop me from getting to sleep. Mr. Gorton has said he's done some soundproofing on the wall, but that's not made any difference. On last occasion when the noise happened prior to lockdown, it was just the same. Environmental health haven't been able to come in and witness this yet because of the lockdown, but I have been of what's going on, and hopefully once lockdown's finished, they can come in, have a look for themselves, try and set the noise limiter that they've said has to go in that room to try and remove this noise nuisance from my house. It's been affecting my mental health, certainly giving me anxiety and stress. I don't know if the music's going to happen on a Friday night or a Saturday night, and when it does, how long it's going to go on for. Will it finish at midnight? Will it finish at 1? I am happy with environmental health plans, but I'm worried how effective they're actually going to be. And I'd like the committee, if possible, to go further than that, which is why I've asked in my representation not to allow any amplified music in that adjoining room. If an Englishman's home is his castle, then mine's being invaded. It's still got the function room for karaoke's and discos and whatever. That doesn't affect me at all. The second point I'd like to make is the erection of the smoking shelter right next to my front door. I came home from work one day to find 2 workmen trespassing on my property, building this wooden shelter. There was no notification from next door, no consultation or anything. It's not a proper smoking shelter, it's just some featherboard panels that have been put together with a plastic corrugated roof. They could have put that anywhere along their 6-inch, but they decided to put it right next to my front door. It generates a lot of noise from users, laughing, talking. It doesn't stop the second-hand smoke from coming over into my property, nor does it stop the smell of tobacco and other products. I've got to say, both myself and my wife have smelt marijuana on more than one occasion coming from that shelter. There are lots of places they could have put that smoking shelter, around the side of the building, around the back of the building, anywhere else along the front. So again, if it's possible, I'm asking the committee to ask them to move it to a more suitable location. And finally, the third point is that I'd like to agree with my neighbours that the opening hours until the early morning, even though they've been reduced by an hour, it's still 1 o'clock in the morning. They're not compatible with a residential area such as ours. Yeah, the club currently has a licence till 2 AM, but that's for a working man's club, not a public house. And the previous club didn't open till then. Their opening hours are 7 PM till midnight. The premises have never ever been known as a late night drinking establishment. Secondly, it's a big difference between, as I said, between a working man's club and a pub. And I believe this application is to turn the premises into a late night music venue, something akin to a nightclub, which is more suited in the town centre location. And that's what I believe what they want to do. The owners haven't applied in this instance to show sports or football on TV, as they had in the previous licence, and as they had been doing prior to lockdown. Why is that an omission on their part, or is it because they're not interested in people going and watching football? They just want to play music. So I do strongly agree with the neighbours. This is a lovely residential area, and late night music venue is not a suitable place for it. As the neighbours have said, there's been lots of issues in the past with noise, litter, public order offences, and we don't want that escalating and carry on into the early morning. This is not going to be a family pub. I'd love to be able to go in next door and have a quiet drink and a chat with the neighbours, but that wouldn't happen. The neighbours aren't going to go in there. It's not for the community. It's for the young people who want to go out drinking late at night. And that, I believe, is not in keeping with this area. Thank you. That's my representation.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to respond to Mr. Smiley?
Yeah.
Is that you, Howard?
Councillor Cant, it's Peter Henderson who I'm representing.
Oh, yes, right. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind just having the opportunity to ask Mr. Smiley a couple of questions. Is he aware that the opening hours that we propose are less than those that are actually in place right now?
Yes, I am, but only by an hour.
Yeah, but they're less. There's this idea that it's going to be a nightclub. I don't know where that's come from because, we're reducing the hours, not extending them to what might commonly be known as club hours.
It's still 1 o'clock at morning.
The other point, you mentioned TV. Watching television, sport on TV is not a licensable activity. So there is no requirement for a licence for a public house other than the Sky TV licence that's required under a separate legislation. So they don't want boxing matches, but TV is just not licensable. So it's not relevant that applied for it.
All right, I thought it came under the sports thing on the activities. My apologies.
No, it doesn't.
Sorry, if I can just confirm from a legal point of view that is correct. It's not a regulated entertainment, isn't the broadcasting of sport on a TV, so they don't actually need to apply to do that.
All right, okay, thank you.
Yeah. The liquor licensing act, the hours are going to be reduced, as you say, by an hour. At no time are they going to be increased, either early morning, late night, whatever it is. The fact is that the club, as it stands, can operate later and can operate under exactly the same circumstances, apart from the fact that they've got to be bona fide guests or members. The members' club is finished, essentially. There are insufficient members to operate that club.
Yeah, and it's a huge change of ethos from a working man's club to a public house.
Well, that's debatable, but it's your opinion.
I'm sure the committee will have that debate.
With regard to the smoking shelter, are you aware that there are additional conditions being requested by Environmental Health?
Yes, I am.
Which have been accepted? You are? Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions for you, Mr. Smiley.
No, my question is if
one more question, perhaps. Could you tell us how many times you've had to contact the police in, say, the last 2 years in regard to anything relating to the club?
No, I haven't got that information, sorry.
Have you contacted the police at all in the last 2 years? Can you tell us? You haven't. Okay, thank you.
But that's irrelevant because I haven't been here 2 years.
Yeah, that's... Good point. Have we any further questions?
No, not from the objector. No. Right.
So now I think to the actual application, which again I believe is Mr. Kirk Horton.
Yeah. I'm representing him, Councillor Cant, if that's all right with you.
Thank you, Peter, yeah.
Okay, well, so the situation as it stands now, approximately half of the premises are given over to a premises licence, and it's known as the function. any person can enter those premises for any reason. You don't need to be a member, you don't need to be a guest. So that is essentially a pub licence for half of the premises as it exists now. The other half, the main area where the bar is and where the dance floor and stage is, together with seating, is covered by the club premises certificate. The intention is that if this application is granted, to make the whole of the property to allow that to be covered under a premises licence. And again, as I said, with reduced hours and with a substantial number of additional conditions, it has to be said. Following representations from the Environmental Health Officer, no less than 9 additional conditions have been agreed by the applicants. These include prohibiting essentially noise nuisance, windows and doors to be kept at all times when regulated entertainment's taking place, the whole of the party wall to be soundproofed. That work has already been carried out by Kurt Gorton at some content, I have to say, but he's agreed to it, it's been done. There will be noise limiters fitted to all sound equipment, amplified sound equipment, which environmental health officers have indicated if they're set to the right levels, they will be happy with the fact that there may not be any noise nuisance whatsoever. There is a regular assessment for noise coming from the premises when regulated entertainment's taking place. The smoking shelter, which is adjacent to Mr. Smiley's property, is not to be used for the consumption of alcohol and shall be closed after 10 p.m. So, as you can see, there are a considerable number of additional steps that have been agreed and that are included on the application. These will become conditions on the licence if it were to be granted. And environmental health officers, the authorised officers of the council, can take action against the applicants, the licence holders, worthy to breach these conditions. It's not an application for a night. There's never any intention for it to be a nightclub. There's been a lot of misinformation circulated from the initial application. Initially, there were numerous objections because a rumour spread that it was going to be open until 4 a.m. That is wholly incorrect. The applicants are responsible people. They've committed a lot of money to put into this enterprise, and it's their intention to operate it as a family-oriented pub, a local. The police, I've contacted the police licensing officers this week, and they've confirmed that in the last 2 years, there have been only 3 contacts from the public in relation to Low House Canteen. Unfortunately, they get the exact details to me under the Freedom of Information Act, but none of the complaints received by the police have been received whilst the applicants have been in control of the premises. The applicants have liaised closely with environmental health officers. They've accepted all the recommendations, including a reduction in hours. And so I think they've gone as far as they can. In the words of the environmental health officer, they can't do any more to mitigate noise nuisance. It may be that Mr. Smiley feels that he could do something on his own premises if he feels that that noise nuisance is unacceptable. But the easiest solution is to contact the environmental health officers, make his complaint and let them take their actions. But I'm satisfied conditions are in place that he won't need to do that. In relation to the other 3 objections, there are all kinds of spurious comments in there. Things like people leaving the club to urinate in an alleyway opposite. It beggars belief that somebody would leave a nice warm club with clean, comfortable toilets to urinate across the street. It just doesn't make any sense. There are comments about drug dealing, and yet nobody's contacted the police. There've been no complaints about drug dealing. It's been painted as Sodom and Gomorrah when in fact that is not the case, and the police records will support that. So the applicants have done as much as they can. They've liaised with residents, they've liaised with environmental health and the licensing authority. And I would ask you to consider granting the application as it stands. In relation to the other three objectors, the council's conduct of hearings says that you should, where people are not able to attend the meeting, you should attach an appropriate weight of evidence presentations. They're not here for me to ask them any questions, so it's really difficult to kind of pin somebody down as to what is opinion, conjecture and fact. And I would suggest that there's a lot of imagination gone into their objections without much fact being present. Nothing further to add at this stage, Councillor Kant, thank you.
All right, thank you, Pete. Have we any more questions? Anyone? Yes, Councillor Baker.
Yeah, Mr. Henderson, in your experience, are drinkers more raucous than normal public members?
Oh, sorry, are drinkers more raucous?
Yeah, if they drink, are they more noisy than normal people walking up and down the street, would you say?
I would imagine that dependent on how much they've drunk. If somebody goes and has a pint of beer or 2 pints of beer, I would suggest that they're no different to anybody else in the street. If somebody has 10 pints of beer, yeah, different matter altogether.
Okay, you've referred a lot to reduced hours, right? And the point I'd like to make is that the drinking area is doubling, right? So I would expect twice as many drinkers to be involved, if you will. And I would think they'd probably be more raucous, even though you don't. But you've reduced the hours. I agree, you've accepted a 1 hour reduction, but you've sort of doubled the space where they can drink. So, what's your thoughts on that?
That's not the case. It's not the case, Councillor Baker. The area for consumption of alcohol, which would be covered by the new licence if granted, is identical to the combined areas of the premises licence for the function room and the club premises certificate for the club part of the premises. So, in fact, it is slightly less, I have to say, because currently the tables that are outside at the front of the premise, from the plan that I'm looking at as supplied by the licensing authority, shows that that is an area that's licensed for purchase of alcohol, whereas in our newly submitted plans that's removed. So it does appear that it's slightly less.
Oh, okay. One more then, I think. You referred to the fact that there have been 3 complaints in the last 2 years, which suggests that it was an extremely well-run working men's club. So would you consider that more than three complaints in the next 2 years if it were operating as a pub?
It's impossible for me to answer that, Councillor Baker. Some premises get lots of contact from the police that are very well run. Responsible licensees contact the police themselves and say, we've got a problem, we need some assistance, and the police will attend. So it's kind of self-defeating in a way if they are responsible to contact the police on regular occasions, if all it does is generate a statistic to be used against them. I think if there is no police contact, I think that suggests that there are no circumstances that give such cause for complaint that the police have to attend. But it's a difficult area, really.
Okay. Peter, I referred earlier to John Clucas about the not risk assessment, was it? It was a risk assessment of the different. What steps are you taking to maintain or improve public nuisance problems? Or what steps will you be taking to improve or maintain public nuisance problems at the level that they are at the moment, i.e. 3 complaints in the last 2?
The legislation doesn't require a risk assessment. What it is it's contained within the application. I don't know whether you've got access to that, but in Section M describes the steps that the applicants intend to take to promote the licensing objectives. And you can see
blank on mine, Peter.
Yeah, that's just general, that cover all 4 licensing objectives. We've actually been more specific. If you look at B, prevention of crime and disorder, you'll see what
that's an internal one, though.
I'm sorry?
So B seems to be the prevention of crime and disorders within the club. Are you preventing crime and disorder within on the club premises, not in the area outside and things like that, perhaps?
Yeah, if you go, if we're talking about public nuisance, go to Section D, please.
Yeah.
And that lists about...
Yeah, I've read it.
9.
I've got all the points, and I heard you earlier on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that there is no separate risk assessment because there's none required. It doesn't ask for one, and I can't recall an application that has contained a risk assessment. What it does contain is an operating schedule, which is what is described in Section B of the application. Section M.
It does actually refer to it in our conditions, but irrelevant then, not really. Take your point on that one. I think that's... Oh, yeah, just one quick question. Why not move the smoking shelter? What's the objection to that? I mean, that would alleviate some of the objections.
I suppose smoking shelter needs to... one of the other objectors said that it's ridiculous to have a smoking shelter. You should send the smokers home if they want to smoke. Okay. So the smoking shelter, they placed it where they thought it would be of most use to the members of the club and cause least problems to residents. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with the area that there are residents surrounding the premises. So would it make a difference in the end? I don't know. It's perhaps a question you might want to ask the applicant.
I thought you were representing the applicant. Sorry, Peter.
Yeah, yes, I am. But I've had no discussion about whether the smoking shelter should be moved. That's the point I'm making.
Okay. So we can't ask the applicant. They're not speaking, are they, Chair?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, I apologise then. Oh, wait.
Yes, Councillor Baker, you can ask the applicant as well. It's just Mr Henderson's just representing him at the minute.
I thought it was the last one we had with the barrister. We answered every question for them. That was all. So
yeah, no, they can't ask questions.
Okay.
Right, thank you, Councillor Baker. Are there any further questions?
Yeah, I have some, please, if I can. First,
yes, okay.
For Mr Henderson.
Yes, right.
Firstly, would Mr Henderson agree that with the age profile of the neighbours around here being elderly, that an online meeting disenfranchises them to actually come into the meeting, whereas they turned up at the previous hearing? So you would be able to ask some questions then if we were meeting face to face.
I'm to the age of the people who've made representations, so I'm afraid I couldn't comment on that.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't think that's actually relevant. I mean, as you know, that we have to do this in the fashion that we're doing it. It's not appropriate for some of us to use this sort of format, but then the circumstances we're in.
Okay. Secondly, the person who's done the soundproofing, what's the specification? Is he a member of the Master Builders Federation or other trade organisation? Any experience of soundproofing?
He's a builder, but I believe that he's not a member of the Master Builders Federation. I'm not too sure that that's a requirement to be able to install soundproofing, but I'm unaware of.
So do you know the
there's a
specification of the soundproofing that's been put in?
Do I know specifically? No, I know it's 4-inch thick soundproofing.
Yeah.
And that it costs £5,000. But apart from that, I have no technical knowledge.
All right, thank you. And if they agree to the smoking shelter closing at 10 p.m, when they're open till 1, what provision have they made for smokers?
They haven't made any other provision.
So the smokers will be out on the street to smoke, because they can't use a smoking shelter?
Potentially.
Yeah, all right, thank you. That's all my points.
Right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else? If not, I have a question to put to Mr. Henderson. I noticed I know we've reduced the hours of which the pub is to be operated in, but one thing I have noticed is the application for playing of recorded music. The times are exactly the same. Now, in my experience, if recorded music on right up until if, say, for instance, it's midnight, when the premises are supposed to be shut, and we have recorded music right up until that time, then it takes some time for people to digress, people to leave the club. So they get a pint or whatever at 5 to midnight. The music stops at midnight, but yet it'll be time before they're actually spilling out onto the street, waiting for the taxis, etc. So in reality, we're not talking about everything shutting at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, respectively. We're actually talking about extra time.
Well, the Licensing Act requires the sale of alcohol by retail to be licensed and for regulated entertainment to be licensed. Drinking of alcohol is not a licensable activity, nor is kind of sitting in a building talking to your friends. So I take your point that as soon as the music stops, people don't just put the coats on and go home. But what they are doing, if the music stops, there is no licensable activity taking place, whether it's purchasing alcohol or live or recorded music. And so I'm not too sure how relevant that is.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, thanks, Peter. Right, so.
Can I say something, Frank?
Well, yeah, you have. Is it a question to whom?
To Peter. Yeah.
Well, you have had your. Oh, sorry. Sorry, it's you, Ivor.
Yeah. That's different.
We're referring to
Councillor Emo. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
What I'm concerned is we're talking about shelter. There's a large area out the back of the club, which I just had a quick squint at last night. I don't think it's used as a car park or anything because it's all like hardcore area. So if that smoke area was put to the back of the building or the club, it might resolve the problem for Mr. Smiley.
Yeah, the area at the back of the club is a car park, and there's a lot of comment being made about increasing traffic and people turning the cars round on in housing estates adjacent to the club. it's essential that the car park is available for use for patrons, I think, and I'm not too sure whether building a smoking shelter at the back would enhance the car parking facility, but it is an option.
Yeah, but the car park, we talk about the car parking, right? How many cars, have you any idea how many cars use that car park when the premises is open?
I don't. No, I have no idea.
Well, I think then why that smoking area could be removed from Mr. Smiley's property or close to Mr. Smiley's property to the back, because I don't think that car park area is being used at all. What I've seen last night.
Well, the premises are not currently open, Councillor, so it would be difficult for you to judge, I would suggest. You know, if the pub was open for business, not that it has been in the last 3 months, then I feel sure that there would be more cars parked on there than there were last night. But, you know, it's a reasonable point that you make.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Right, so it's, I think, with final deliberations, if I'm correct.
Where's the applicants?
It's just to summarise first. So if anybody wants to summarise, they've already said it's for Mr. Smiley to summarise and then for Mr. Henderson to summarise if they want to. They don't necessarily have to.
But we do have an opportunity to question the applicants.
If there's any questions you specifically want to ask the applicant, is that okay with you if they ask the applicant something directly?
Yeah, the opportunity was there earlier in the meeting to do that.
Sorry, Chair, but I wanted to ask whether we can move the smoking shelter. Mr. Henderson said that, well, I was told it was up to the applicants. They would have an opportunity to respond to that. So for him to say we didn't ask the questions a bit obscure.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I misunderstood you, Councillor. A question for Mr. Gorton. I thought you were asking Mr. Smiley. My apologies.
No, not.
I don't have any objection to you asking questions of.
I think it's important that we do get clarity regarding the smoking shelter situation.
Yeah.
Right. So Councillor Baker, you would like to ask a question of the applicant?
Yeah, only because Peter Henderson couldn't answer the question, and it was.
I'm willing to
them. That was all.
Right. Is that Kirk?
It is, yeah.
Right, and if you'd like to respond to Councillor Baker.
For the removal of the smoking area. Yeah,
basically, same as Councillor Hill, can we not move it somewhere else?
Well, we discussed this with everyone of Angle. We're very built up with houses. You know, every corner there will be a complaint. Now, if I moved it to the back, I've got a car park. Now, the car park is used by as customers and also residents because there's no front parking. I do also let residents park on this car park alone. I don't charge them. But then if I move my smoking area to the rear of the building, would the lower fields residents not say exactly the same thing as what Mr. Smiley is now referring to? Now, if I moved it to the corner of the front, I don't know the street, would they also refer to exactly the same? I just feel like I'm in pegged. I've tried doing a smoking area because when I first took over the building, that's what they asked for. I didn't put on it to be sparkful or anything. I just did it because that's what they asked for, because they had a little thing on the front. Now, with the environmental health, they've said as long as I shut that at 10 o'clock, people can go onto the front. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go onto the streets, but I can't rope people in to say, no, you can't go, you can't do this. That's why I've done a smoking area, so they can all go to the smoking area. But having it on the rear, the car park is full. It's full all the time. Now, you would understand that I've got customers, and then I've also let residents park here. So I just think it's impossible to be on the rear of the building.
How many buildings actually adjoin yours?
All the buildings belong to this Laurie's pub. It's all the buildings what belong to them originally. Just the one. There's just Mr. Smiley's for like one.
That's the
But
point.
I'm only
There's only one actually adjoined.
Oh, adjoined, yeah, sorry. Yeah, there's only one adjoined, but
And that's
from the lower field, we've also received complaints from lower field, and they're still a car park way. So if I put a smoking area at the rear, I'm then going to get more of the complaints again, which is at number 3 and number 4 lower fields.
Yes. Councillor Baker, will you?
Yeah. Sorry, Chair.
Will you try and refrain from talking across, please?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So I accept that they're not prepared to move the smoking area. Okay.
It's not that I'm not prepared. It's just that if you can come to the building yourself and find me an area where I'll not receive any complaints, because I feel like when I got the complaints at the first, there was all around the building. Now, this is a very built-up area with houses, so if I put it on the back and I receive complaints from lower field, then I've not gained, I've not made anyone happy, because then they're going to be upset. The people from the new builds are going to be upset, and also Mr. Smiley's upset. So is there anywhere on the things I could put that smoking area where I will make someone feel more safe and they don't want the noise? I will happily do that, but to say that it needs to go on the back and the car park doesn't get used, it's wrong. The car park does get used, and I don't fancy having, like you said, 10 people in a car park when there's all the other vehicles and stuff. The vehicles are here, aren't they? Your battery's gone.
Yeah. Okay. I don't smoke, so I
don't. We don't smoke ourselves.
Anyway, so.
No, we don't smoke ourselves, but they just asked for a smoking area. I didn't put it there to be malicious or anything. They just asked for a smoking area, put one on, and if there's somewhere here that I can move it, I will move it to that place. It's just every 4 corners, I've got a street away, I've got an house away, so I feel like I'm going to get that same complaint all the time with that smoking area. But obviously, with me doing it now, clock, and they have to now find somewhere else to smoke.
So, it's your business anyway, Chair. I'll just finish off with the fact that if people that smoke come to your pub, then find out at 10 o'clock there's no smoking area, they ain't going to hang around that long unless you come up with something that works.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say. I just feel like people around this area are trying to jeopardise my business. That's what I feel.
Okay. No more questions, Chair. Right. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Whilst we've got the applicant, is there anybody else wishes to make any comments? So, no. Right, so we'll move up to summing up. You're allowed to sum up if you so wish to do so. And I think the first one is Mr. Smiley. If he'd like to sum up, if you don't want to, it's...
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, in summary, for my points then, I would say what I'm asking the committee for is no amplified music to be played against our adjoining wall in that club room, removal of the smoking shelter away from my front door, and just to remind the committee that, as the applicants just said, this is a highly residential area and it's not suitable for a late night music venue. And that's my summary. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is it Mr.
Yeah.
Right. Would you like to sum up?
Very briefly, Councillor, thank you. No amplified music in the main area of the club is not an option for the applicants. That's where everyone sits. That's where the music has taken place for the last... I'm personally aware. I went in that club in 1966 and listened to live bands there. So there's nothing new in what's happening now. The applicants have bent over backwards to meet the requirements of residents and other agencies, even to the extent that they've removed the stage from the petition wall to try and reduce or mitigate any noise nuisance. It's not going to be a nightclub. That is not the essence of it. And if the licence were to be granted and problems occurred in future, there is always the option of a premises licence, which is essentially a rerun of this hearing. And at that stage, if any additional conditions were required, then the committee at that time would be able to put additional conditions on, reduce hours, and take pretty strong action. What we would hope is that if Mr. Smiley's still there and he's still annoyed at what's happening, then he could approach applicants who have already proved themselves more than willing to accommodate residents' wishes where they can. So even if you were to grant the application as it stands today, that doesn't mean that it's there forever and a day and can't be re-looked at should there be a problem. But I'm confident that the measures that have been put in place and are still to be put in place and checked by the Environmental Health Officer, noise limiters, would resolve any issues before they occurred. But I've nothing further to add at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Right, yeah, thank you, Mr. Henderson. Have we missed anybody out?
I think just Mr. Clucas, but I'm not sure if Mr. Clucas had anything to summarise.
Yes, of course, yeah. Have you anything to say, Mr. Clucas?
No, thank you. I think it's all been covered before.
Right,
Chair.
okay, that's great then. So at this stage, we'll just go into private session and decide on the application.
So over to you. Councillor Kent?
Oh, right, yes. Right, on conclusion, thank you very much, everyone. The committee have decided to grant the licence according to all the conditions that are in the operating schedule. There's just one thing that I'd like to mention, and the fact that in the opening hours and closing hours, just want to make the applicants aware that when they say that the premises will finish at 2400 hours or 2300 hours or 1 o'clock, that is the time when everyone should have left the premises. So the point that I made earlier on about the music and the serving of alcohol, perhaps they should be aware that it would be better to start running down before the actual end time. So in other words, people should have left the pub by 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock respectively. And that concludes. And thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you, Chair.
Look, I'll pass your message on to the applicants.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you to the councillor Kant and the committee.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you.